let's take it from the other side. So after dealing with the client, you are like, these types of interactions are very stressful for us as veterinary team members. So what are ways in which we can then de-stress ourselves, right? Because that's what we're dealing with on a regular basis now as the pandemic continues, so to speak, and we're in this scenario.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, there's so many different things. I mean, there's things that we can do during our shifts to help relieve stress and to, discharge that energy, so to speak. I will say, as an aside, venting is definitely not always productive. So we have to be a little bit careful in terms of how we're talking about these situations after they happen. If you go to someone on the team with an intention to really process something, learn from it, figure out, maybe I could have said something differently. The owner really escalated after I said XYZ, could we talk this out because I don't think I handled it well, then that can be very beneficial because it allows you to really, gain context and perspective around what happened and basically prevent it from happening again, or prevent you from handling it the way you did again. However, if you're just going to your team being like, these stupid owners, and I'm sick and tired of this, that, and the other, and if one more owner says to me, blah, 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 research actually shows that sort of venting, which is just really unilateral, or I should say, directed outward, there's no invitation for conversation, there's no wanting to process, it really is just venting, like, talking at someone, that actually heightens negative energy and it actually increases cortisol in the body. So I would definitely stay away from venting, but you can discharge the energy in other ways. You could, have a little dance party, shake it off, turn on some music, and everybody just like gets all silly for a minute. Even just listening to music can be very comforting for some people. As a yoga teacher and meditation instructor, obviously, I'm a huge fan of focusing on your breathing, taking a mindful break. So mindfulness, really being in the present moment, that's really fostered by tuning into our senses. So if I'm feeling super rattled and like my mind is just going 1,000 places, 100 miles a minute, I'll take a minute to just count in my surroundings. 5 things I can see, 4 things that I can touch. No, 5 things that I can see, 4 things that I can hear, 3 things that I can touch, 2 things that I can smell, and 1 thing that I can taste. So you're just tuning into all the senses. Yep, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that basically, as long as you're tuning into your senses, it's literally impossible to have your mind be anywhere else. You are present moment focused as long as you're tuning into your senses. For some people, just focusing on the breathing, and some people like to count their breath. Some people do certain breathing techniques. I find when I'm really stressed out, like breath holding and stuff like that, it actually worsens my anxiety. But what can really help to upregulate the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest state, is to prolong our exhales and even just sighing. So like sometimes I'll be around people in the hospital and they're just like, ah, and it's actually a good thing. It's like, yeah, let it out, even in yoga, sometimes we'll be like, we'll make all these noises, and just, it's physiologically beneficial to the body to do that. That basically tells the body, okay, it's safe. We're going to really rest, and bring the nerves down, so to speak. So yeah, for me, a few deep exhales, sighs, just even, if I breathe in for 4 seconds, I'm breathing out for 6 seconds, just to kind of prolong that. Getting outside of the hospital, taking a walk, even if it's just like a quick lap around the hospital. I remember when I was in academia, sometimes I just needed to get out. And so I would just do like a little lap around the teaching hospital. And then everything is better after you've had, a little bit of fresh air. Some teams like watching YouTube videos, like really funny, ridiculous YouTube videos. Ask Google or, Alexa to tell you a joke, something to just sort of break that tension and discharge that energy. So those would be things that I think are really beneficial during the shift. Outside of the shift, holy moly, self-care is of the utmost importance right now. Like, I can't stress it enough. And I want to reiterate to everybody what that really means, because self-care, we've got this misconception sometimes that it's like, going home and pouring a big glass of wine and watching Netflix. And, for me, it's not that that's not okay. If you had a 16-hour shift and you do have zero energy to do anything else but that, then do that, if that allows you to rest and feel better. The issue with considering that self-care is that it's not actually health promoting, and in the long term, it's going to deplete your reserves. With self-care, we want to build up our reserves so that when we're going into a horrible stretch of shifts or like a really busy work week, or we're recovering from one, it's productive, it's intentional. We're doing things like, I just came off a really long 5. I worked 6 days a week this week instead of my usual 4. I'm going to book a massage, my next day off. Or, I know that I'm going into a really big stretch of shifts and my anxiety has been really amping up lately. So I'm going to make sure that I see my counselor before I start my stretch of shifts. Or I'm going to meal prep before. I'm going to make sure I do twice as much exercise on the weekend, knowing that I'm not going to have time to exercise during the week. Like, that's what self-care is. And on those days where, you have the client that takes your head off and everything else, I think the biggest advice that I would give to people is to let that go once your shift is over. So have some sort of ritual at the end of your day where, I'm taking off my scrub top, I'm, maybe I go home and I take a shower, or I walk the dog. You've got some sort of ritual that triggers your mind and your body that work is done. I'm not going to think about it anymore. And now it's time for me to be at home with my family, with my pet, with my partner, whatever it might be. And that's going to be my focus, because research shows in human medicine that human caregivers, that work-life separation, or that distinction between their work role and their home role, is a really, really big indicator of well-being, because it gives our mind a break. Otherwise, we feel like we're just constantly in work mode, and that's exhausting. That's what leads to burnout.
That's awesome advice. So for me personally, let's put something out personally for you is that as a business owner, it's kind of tough to separate those, because you get pulled in through a text or call or anything like that, even though you want to tune out, but you also have to be present if something is needed to be addressed, right? And then one of my big personal things is that sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and it is tough for me to get back to sleep, because all these thoughts start going through my mind, whether it's about the events of the day or what's going to happen tomorrow and everything like that. So what sort of advice would you get for those moments? I guess I'm not alone, because I do hear it from my teammates that, oh yeah, I woke up early and I couldn't sleep because I started thinking about the case yesterday or something like that. So what sort of advice would you give for that?
Yeah, it's super common, especially for those of us who, we're like so heady about our jobs, like we're intellects and obviously we care. So we're going to be thinking about a case that didn't go well, or an exchange with a client or a coworker that, kind of took a wrong turn. And it's interesting, what they say for middle of the night awakenings. First of all, they're 9 times out of 10, they're caused by worry or stress. So it usually is, because we wake up all the time at night. Most of the time we fall asleep unless there's something that's bothering us, right? So there's different techniques that you can use to try and get yourself to fall back asleep, in the moment. So that's where mindfulness becomes really helpful again, because basically what you're doing is you're either thinking about the past, you're ruminating, or you're anxiously thinking about the future, right? You're forward thinking, and neither of those are in the present moment. So if you can, listen to a meditation to help ground you in the present moment. If you don't want to, if your, wife or somebody is sleeping beside you and you don't want to wake them up, and you don't have headphones, then even just, focusing on your breathing, just really visualizing your breath coming in and out, counting it, Every time your mind wanders, you notice it. Okay, gosh, I'm thinking about that case at work again. And then you just bring it back to the breath. Doing a body scan where you literally just like visualize from your head to your toes, every single part of your body. Some people will tense the part of the body and then relax it. And that can help to kind of, get them more relaxed again to fall asleep. But those are definitely some strategies for, in the few minutes where you wake up and you really recognize like, gosh, my mind's racing and I'm going to have trouble falling asleep. The experts also say if you have been awake for more than 20 minutes, like laying in bed, and tried these strategies and you literally can't fall asleep, that they really suggest getting out of bed. So they say get up, do something to distract yourself, not anything that's super activating, like you don't want to turn on some horror movie and get your mind thinking about something else, but reading a book, doing a crossword, doing some stretching, cleaning the kitchen, doing the dishes, folding the laundry, something that's just going to get you out of bed, get you into something else. And then once you feel tired enough again that you really think that you could fall asleep, or maybe you get up and you like write down what's bothering you, just so that you're like, okay, I've written it down, it's out of my head, I can stop thinking about this now. Definitely tend to whatever it is that's bothering you if you can in the moment. But then once you can, reasonably you think fall asleep again, then you would try and fall asleep. And some people will even redo their whole bedtime routine again. So if, in the half an hour before you go to bed at night, you, journal or meditate or stretch or read a book or whatever, for people, myself included, who get up in the middle of the night and just like, we're sort of having troubles falling back asleep, I'll get up and I'll kind of go through the motions of what I would do to try and get myself to bed in the first place. So they say that it's important to do that because if you're just laying in bed worrying all the time, then that's going to become a habit for your mind, right? Every time you get in bed, you're going to think, yes, okay, now's where I process all my stuff. So it's literally like sleep training for adults. You have to like train yourself. Okay, if I'm going to be worrying like this, I can't be in bed because this isn't where I do my worrying. So I need to get up and deal with this and then, re-trigger myself to fall asleep.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent advice. Yeah, I'm gonna take all that advice. I like that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing too.
Yeah.
It all boils down to 5 things I can eat. 5 things. Oh, there's 5 things.
Too funny. But yeah, I hear you. It's tough when you're a business owner, because it doesn't ever really turn off. And I find for me, and I don't own a veterinary practice, but I am, I do run my own business, and the work is never ending, right? There's always something, and the email's always there, and it's always you that's needed, at some point or another. As best you can, when there are moments when you literally are not at the helm, like when you've consciously said, look, I'm off, I'm not available, except for extreme emergencies or whatever, to really intentionally disconnect during those times. So don't be checking your phone, turn off your notifications, communicate to your team. If you need me, I am only available by phone. Like, don't text me, don't email me, because I'm not going to be checking because I'm going to be off, or, set that tone right from the get-go, set those expectations. This is why we talk about boundaries, right? It's like, I don't check my work email after 9:00 at night, or if I'm not in the hospital, I don't check text messages after 9:00. So if you need me after 9:00, you got to call me. Because then otherwise you're just like constantly at the whim of your electronics and your notifications, and you're always on. And that way, if you set that expectation, if they need me and it's an emergency, they're going to call me. I'm going to hear my phone ring and I'll deal with it then. Until then, I'm at home, I'm with my family, and that's my focus.
Excellent. That's excellent advice.